Between the hills, the stars, the sky, the river so clear, river so clear.
As we gather this morning, I respectfully acknowledge that we are in a place with a long history that existed before many of us arrived. We are in a place to which Nueda, Hidatsa, Sanish, Dakota, Lakota, Métis, Tatitsi, Anishinaabe peoples have all belong, connection, and deep knowledge. Colonialism does not only live in history books. I am working to understand how I contribute to and benefit from colonialism and systemic racism in my everyday life. And I, and so many of us in this place right now, are in this place right now as a result of deep injustices to the original peoples of this land. This acknowledgement is meaningless without effort, understanding, and committed action to doing better and being better. As we deepen into our service, let us set the tone for this service with words from Margaret J. Wheatley. Relationships are all there is. Everything in the universe only exists because it is in relationship to everything else. Nothing exists in isolation. We have to stop pretending we are individuals that can go it alone. We join Unitarian Universalists all over the world this morning in lighting our chalice. The chalice is a symbol of the spark of life in each of us. If you are on Zoom and have a chalice with you, I invite you to turn on your video and share with others while we light the chalice here. We are in good company. Our chalice lighting words this morning are entitled A Shared Story, and they were written by Reverend Sandra Fees. For the stories that long to be told and retold, for the stories that long to be imagined and reimagined, for the stories that long to be envisioned and celebrated, we kindle this chalice. May its flame bring light of different truths, different paths, and different voices, all needed to cultivate a transformative story of justice, love, and beauty.
Peace is in the desert trees, who stood before the first breath of wind is yet perceived. Trust in the song becoming one with the dance, and all mysteries can be believed.
And I am very pleased at this time to introduce our friend and UU member, Megan Carranza, who will give us an overview of our immigration laws and dispel some of the current myths. Megan is an attorney at law. She has worked with immigrants since 2004, and in 2023 founded Carranza Immigration Law, a law practice dedicated to immigration and nationality law where she handles citizenship, family, humanitarian, immigration matters. Her work includes contracting with the Immigrant Law Center in Minnesota to provide pro bono legal assistance to asylees, refugees, and immigrants in North Dakota to the United States immigration and nationality law. Megan and her husband Aaron and their children have been members of our congregation for a number of years, and they both teach Sunday school. And now it is really a pleasure to introduce Megan for this morning's program.
Good morning. Thanks for inviting me to talk about immigration. And even as immigration in the United States keeps shaping this country, it remains one of the most debated topics in our society. So first, I'm going to give a brief overview about immigration. I won't give my 1-hour Immigration 101 PowerPoint, but I will give you a summary and debunk some myths. Then I want to address what may be coming with the new presidential administration that takes office this month. Well, I don't have a crystal ball. I appreciate that there is uncertainty and some fear from many perspectives. So when I take questions, we'll turn off the Zoom recording. So immigration to the US is complex. It can involve waiting for years and navigating evolving government regulations. As far as terminology, illegal is a word that's insensitive and overbroad. So despite rhetoric about what people call illegal immigration, do know that most travelers come to the US with permission. And instead of calling people immigrants, I'm going to call them non-citizens, because I'm describing individuals from those who are just here visiting to those who've been living here with permission for decades. So non-citizens. And when I use the term green card, it means someone who is approved by the U.S. Department of Homeland Security to be a permanent resident in the United States. And so after having a green card for the certain amount of time, a permanent resident can apply to become a U.S. citizen. And to qualify for citizenship, applicants have to show things like they can speak, read, and write English, know some history and civics about the U.S., support their dependents, pay their taxes, and not commit certain crimes. But going back to how people get here, non-citizens get to the U.S. in the first place through a variety of legal channels, including through family. U.S. citizens and permanent residents, so green card holders, can sponsor some family members for immigration. Family sponsorship is limited to parents, children, spouses, fiancés, and siblings. And the closer the relationship, the shorter the wait. For example, the current wait time for siblings is over 17 years. Employment is another option for people to come to the U.S. or stay in the U.S. People with specific job skills generally can come to work on work visas. You may have heard of some work visas like the H-1B for professional jobs or H-2A visas for seasonal agricultural work. But employment options also include allowing some people who invest enough money in a business and create jobs to come here and stay here. Then another way to come or stay is refugee and asylum status. So people fleeing persecution in their home country, like torture or death, can apply for refuge in the US. It does result in a green card and then later citizenship. Now, the difference between a refugee and an asylee is that refugees are approved outside the US and asylees are approved inside the US. So refugees are vetted and approved to come to the US before they enter the US, but asylees are people who enter the US with or without permission and then can be approved for refuge here in the US if they can show that they were persecuted or will be persecuted. Then there are some unique forms of immigration that are for smaller groups of people, like the diversity visa lottery, that allows a limited number of people from certain countries that have low immigration rates to apply for a chance at a green card. So recently, myths about immigration have become widespread. Even if you already know the facts I'm about to share, maybe they'll be a good reminder for you as you visit with others who aren't as familiar about U.S. immigration. So myth number 1, immigrants are a drain on the U.S. economy. That is false. In fact, studies show that non-citizens contribute significantly to the U.S. economy. And non-citizens fill essential jobs in fields like agriculture, healthcare, construction, and technology. And non-citizens pay taxes. Actually, the non-citizen labor force is credited to keeping the U.S. economy growing. The idea that non-citizens are taking more from the system than they contribute is not true. And some folks working without authorization and Social Security numbers are paying taxes, but won't draw from the social safety nets they're paying into. And for refugees, who are given public benefits when they arrive, such as food stamps, Medicaid, and even cash assistance, when they first arrive, those benefits are limited to their income. And government incentive programs can limit benefits if participants become non-compliant, like if they stop English classes or stop working. So myth number 2, immigrants come to the U.S. without permission or illegally. That's also false for many parts. In fact, most immigrants do come to the U.S. with permission through family, work, or refugee status. Others come temporarily with permission, think like students or visitors, and then apply to stay or to return. Staying or returning is often through family, work, or asking for asylum. Some people do arrive at U.S. borders without prior permission. There is a government process to ask to enter the U.S. to seek asylum protection, but it can be complicated and long. Some folks resort to sneaking to the U.S., and whether for economic opportunity or fleeing persecution, no matter how a person enters the U.S. Constitution provides for due process protections. However, rights to non-citizens can be limited. I do have some Know Your Rights flyers in the back, but some highlights I think that are helpful for you to know and for non-citizens to know is that folks do have the right to remain silent. So this is true when dealing with any low level of local law enforcement, but also with federal immigration law enforcement. Immigration law enforcement needs a warrant to enter someone's home. They also need a warrant to enter church. Folks have a right to a lawyer. While lawyers aren't paid for at government expense for immigration-related issues, there is no need for a non-citizen to answer questions or sign forms until receiving legal advice or having their lawyer present. Non-citizens have rights to child custody information. So this is important in terms of folks who are at risk of being deported. For non-citizen parents, including undocumented or folks here without permission, are entitled to custody of their children to the same extent as citizen parents. The Department of Homeland Security is currently instructed to remain cognizant and accommodate U.S. citizen children whose parents are facing imminent deportation. We don't know if that internal policy will continue under the new administration. But even if deported or detained, all parents of citizen or non-citizen children in the U.S. have the right to receive notice of custody hearings. So no matter where the parent is, and no matter the status, the immigration status of the child, parents are entitled to rights about the custody of their children. In North Dakota, courts provide a simple one-page power of attorney for care and custody of a minor child. So parents without an estate plan should consider completing this form to provide another trusted adult a 6-month window of authority in case of the parent's detention or deportation. Myth number 3, immigrants are more likely to commit crimes. This is also false. In fact, research shows that non-citizens are actually less likely to commit crimes than U.S.-born citizens. Immigrant communities tend to have lower crime rates and higher levels of community involvement. Myth number 4, people have anchor babies in the U.S. to sponsor them later. In fact, a baby born in the U.S. cannot sponsor their non-citizen parent until that baby is at least 21 years old. Also, parents who enter the U.S. without permission are generally not eligible to ask for a green card. So, focusing on truth and in the present, we're facing a new presidential administration in 2 weeks. During the last Trump presidency, the administration made efforts to limit immigration and prevent unauthorized entry to the United States, particularly through implementing more restrictive policies. And we can learn from the past. So non-citizens affected during the last administration should explore additional options now. For example, deferred action for childhood arrivals, or what we might have heard of as DACA or Dreamers, can consider whether new immigration options exist now, given their current circumstances. And folks affected by the last travel ban that targeted predominantly Muslim countries can plan to return to the U.S. from international travel now before Inauguration Day. Churches for years have benefited from a Department of Homeland Security internal policy that prevents immigration officers from detaining non-citizens in what they call sensitive locations, which includes churches, schools, and hospitals. Under the new administration, churches may no longer have this protection. However, churches can assist by consider requiring warrants and continuing to offer virtual services for congregants. There were campaign promises of large-scale deportations, and experts from prior administrations believe that any raids or mass deportations will probably occur in cities that have direct flights to countries that are accepting deportees, such as Haiti and Guatemala. Therefore, it's probably not likely that North Dakota will see large-scale deportation efforts because of our lack of direct flights. But no matter where non-citizens are in the United States, they should carry their U.S. identification at all times. And if they don't have one, because they may not have an immigration status in the U.S., current law does provide the right to a deportation hearing with a judge before being deported. The deportations and mass deportations should only affect those who already have deportation orders from the past, but are in the United States either after returning or after staying. If there are raids or any mass deportations, folks who do have status might consider executing one of those power of attorneys for their children anyway, because everyone will be rounded up at once, and those who don't have immediate release because of lack of documentation or not having a document on them might need that interim permission to take care of their children. So I think it's always a good idea to have it completed just in case. You can execute a new one every 6 months if you don't need it in the interim. And as we look towards the future of immigration in the United States, we know that the landscape is likely to change under the new administration. And immigration is not just a policy issue, but a human issue. I think churches can play roles in both advocacy and in day-to-day support. Immigration law is federal, but in addition to the federal level, communities like this can express their voice at the local level. You can speak up to your city councils and school boards about things like the impact of your taxpayer dollars and share stories about how immigration has improved a situation or a region or even just your life. The Unitarian Universalist tradition calls us to be voices of compassion and justice, and by supporting immigrant families, advocating for more just policies, and offering our congregations as places of support and welcoming, we can be a part of the solution to the challenges that lie ahead. So in closing, I want to summarize immigration options by dispelling the biggest lie most Americans believe about immigration. If they wanted to come here legally, they could. Working in the United States immigration law for 20 years, I've met hundreds, maybe thousands of non-citizens who have no viable options to immigrate to the U.S. This includes educated and self-sufficient people. This is because United States immigration law offers fewer pathways than similar counterparts like Canada, the UK, and Australia. Over 60% of United States immigration happens through family ties. But remember, even through family member sponsorship, the wait could be decades, and it's generally only for folks who entered the U.S. with permission in the first place. If someone doesn't have a family member to sponsor them, immigration through employment requires an employer sponsor. But unless you're either rich enough to qualify for that investment or $1 million green card, or extraordinary enough to be one of the exceptions to employer-sponsored immigration, think people who have solved the cure for cancer or people who are NBA award winners. That's what they consider extraordinary. It's a really high standard. It's tricky because finding an employer to sponsor you means that the employer will have to spend maybe $10,000 or more on your fees in the process. Plus, it might be a 2 to 3 year wait for the employer before you can even get here or start to work for them. And temporary work visas require filling just a temporary labor shortage, so seasonal. So in summary, too, you have to be a millionaire, extraordinary, or seasonal, which doesn't provide you that continuity that you need coming back and forth. Living here for 9 months at a time means that you can't establish the roots here you might need. So outside of family and employment options, there, I mentioned options for asylum seekers. There are also some options for victims of crimes and domestic violence in the U.S., but each of these has strict evidence requirements. Generally, I'd say people aren't very successful if they can't afford an attorney. So a middle-class family consisting of perhaps a tile layer and a school teacher likely has few to no options for permanent location to the United States. So people can't come here if they just feel like it.
Our extinguishing the chalice and closing words are from Reverend Julianne Lepp, The Richness of Our Differences. We seek our place in the world and the answers to our heart's deep questions. As we seek, may our hearts be open to unexpected answers. May we be reminded that all beings are whole, sacred, and worthy. Let our hearts be welcoming of multiple truths, not holding hard or fast to closed-mindedness or judgmental thinking. What can we learn from each other in the richness of our differences? May the heart of compassion help us recognize the sacred in each other and bridge differences in these challenging times. May each of us be held in relationship, accountability, and the power of beloved community. Blessed be.